Hey everybody, welcome to our overland adventure. I cannot overstate that this trip was the trip of a lifetime. I spent months getting the Jeep ready. My wife took her time off, the kids were off for the summer, and we were packing up the Jeep without the overland trailer to head out on a 2-week camping trip. I had literally been waiting my entire life to wield the Rubicon. Because we were driving so far just to get to the Rubicon, we needed to take a massive amount of time off. We were taking 2 weeks off to basically do 2 days of wheeling. And so we wanted to maximize those miles. And so we started off leaving southern Washington and heading to Crater Lake. And we spent a few hours there at Crater Lake, taking in the scenery, doing hikes, and just looking at this beautiful lake and this beautiful crater. That next morning, we headed further south to the Redwoods. Our goal was to make it to the Redwoods State Park because we planned to get there relatively late in the afternoon. We had a lot of miles to cover, and we planned on doing a 14-mile hike from the Redwood State Park campground that we were in to the beach. We had been working up to doing a long hike like this, and we were pretty excited about it. But unfortunately, about halfway there, I start feeling like crap. Very weak, very tired, headache, mucus. This was in the middle of my allergy season, so I was kind of hoping it was just allergies. But the headache had me concerned, and being weak had me concerned. So we swung through a Walgreens, grabbed a COVID test, and unfortunately, myself and my son Xander had contracted COVID. My wife and my daughter were both negative, which was really strange. We were all vaccinated up, we were all current, we were all together, so it was strange that my son and I got it and my wife and daughter didn't. But nevertheless, we were feeling it. So we made it to camp, set up, we let the family know, hey, just in case, you guys might play it safe. And the next morning we were supposed to get up and do our hike, and I just did not have it in me. Me and Xander both felt horrible. Yes, I wanted to do the hike, but for me, it was more about getting healthy in time to feel good on the Rubicon, because that was the primary goal for the trip, was getting on the Rubicon and wheeling. Again, I'd been waiting my whole life to do some hardcore wheeling like the Rubicon. And I didn't want COVID to ruin that. And so I just crashed for basically 36 hours. And so did Xander. My daughter did not want to do the hike. She stuck around to take care of me and Xander, and instead my wife went and did the hike for herself. And so she was gone all day doing this hike. She enjoyed it. It was a blast for her. She came back to camp, that is. And by that point, I was up and cooking dinner. And yeah, so that was basically the extent of my experience in the Redwood State Park. We did drive through the Trees of Mystery. The campground that we stayed at was called the Prairie Creek campground. It was Prairie Creek Redwood State Park, I think. But yeah, so we basically spent the night there, all day the next day, and then crashed, and then got up the next morning, and then headed on our way. And so the next day was going to be a lot of miles. Our goal was to make it to San Francisco, and we did make it. This was probably the hardest part of the trip, having an oversized vehicle loaded down on the roof with gear and trying to find somewhere to park in San Francisco was difficult. We did plan on staying at a hotel because it didn't make sense to go to a campground. This was kind of midway on our trip. We wanted to get a good shower, get cleaned up after a few days camping. And so we got a hotel downtown San Francisco, and we planned on doing the sights. And so we went and hit Alcatraz and Golden Gate Bridge, and we did the trolleys, and all that wonderful stuff. But the hardest part was finding a place to park. Luckily, just a few blocks from our hotel, we finally found parking garage that was secure, that had a couple of spaces with enough clearance for me to park the Jeep. It was a little nerve-wracking because we did have a lot of gear and just stuff in the Jeep, and so we were worried about theft or burglary, but luckily it was just fine. We left it there overnight, went and did our exploring of San Francisco the next day, and then the following day we got up and we headed towards Lake Tahoe. We spent a day at Lake Tahoe, a day and a night, and did some swimming on the south end of Lake Tahoe. Hey everybody, we are at Lake Tahoe. This is one of the few drive-up beach sites that you can come to on the southern side of Lake Tahoe, and it's a pretty nice beach. Drove the Jeep down. We actually are camping at a different campground, but camping at that other campground gives you access to this one, so we didn't have to pay for this one. So we just drove the 5 miles up and enjoyed the beach for 30 minutes or so. The water's pretty cold. It was very, very cold. Took a few minutes to get in. It took a few minutes to kind of get used to it. And you couldn't stay for long. Xander got in pretty quickly, and then I got in, and we had to beg Rosalind to get in, and Mom never really got in, but it is what it is. But yeah, just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. We're going to head back to camp and warm up and have some dinner. So we headed into Georgetown, and we were just going to camp overnight at the airport. For those of you who don't know, the airport there in Georgetown has a big open field. It's fairly common for people to park their tow vehicles and their trailers and camp there. That being kind of the beginning of the Rubicon Trail. And so that's what we did. We just threw our tents up and camped there for the night because we had to get up super early in the morning to meet at the gathering spot. And so that day we also had to check in. This was one of 3 Jeep Jamborees that we have been on. And so the way that's usually structured is you make it there the day before, you check in, you figure out what groups you're in, they do safety inspections, make sure you've got all your stuff, make sure you've done your paperwork, all that good stuff. And then the next day, you go out and you do your wheeling. And so this was one day of wheeling basically all the way through the Rubicon to Rubicon Springs. and then you camp there overnight, you stay there the whole next day, camp that night, and then the next morning you get up and you wheel out. And basically, all you have left is Cadillac Hill. And so that's what we were doing. So we had made it there to Georgetown. We went and did our check-in, got registered, went and grabbed some food, stocked up on supplies at the grocery store there, and then went and crashed at the airport parking lot. Next morning we got up, got to our staging area. We were in group 2 of 3. This is where I get a little bit frustrated. Again, I'd been waiting for this trip basically my whole life. I wanted to do all the iconic obstacles. And basically the way that they do this is group 1 was people who have done the Rubicon and had vehicles built for it. So you both had the vehicle for it and you had the experience on the Rubicon. That was group 1. They put them in the front, and the theory was they would blow through the obstacles a little faster and not cause a bottleneck. And then group 2, I was in group 2, I had the vehicle built for it. I had a lot of experience, but this was my first time on the Rubicon. And so the thought was, you have a vehicle built for it, you've got a lot of experience, you should be able to go through most of the obstacles, again, not causing any major roadblocks. And then the third group was mildly built vehicle. You didn't have a lot of armor, you didn't have a whole lot of experience. And this was the group that was most prone to have issues. It didn't actually turn out that way. Somebody in group 1 had major issues and caused major roadblocks, and it basically slowed down the entire group. And unfortunately, due to that and the delays it caused, they had made certain obstacles not optional. Like you couldn't go do the obstacle, you had to do the bypass. And so things like the Soup Bowl, things like Big Sluice, we weren't allowed to do. We had to do the bypass. Still a lot of great wheeling, still, beautiful, still a great trip. But when you do these Jeep Jamborees, you pay a substantial amount of money. And to not be able to say that, yeah, I did the Rubicon and I did those obstacles is a little frustrating. And so I would not do a Jeep Jamboree. And again, this is Jeep Jamboree. This is not Jeepers Jamboree. Those are two different things. This is Jeep Jamboree. It's more family friendly than Jeepers Jamboree. Jeepers Jamboree, my understanding, is a little more laid back, a little bit more of a party trip. And you're kind of more on your own as far as getting to Rubicon Springs and how you get there and your camping and all that stuff. Now, some of the benefits of doing these Jeep Jamborees is they take care of the logistics, right? They're flying in food, they're flying in gear, they've got spotters at every potential obstacle to help you get through it. If you break, they've got mechanics and parts and people to help you. And so for people who've never done that, who don't have vehicles built to take the abuse and have the spare parts to know that you can get in and get out, then yeah, it makes sense to do one of these, to pay the price, basically, to pay the fees to go do this with an experienced group. It's basically going to guarantee that you get it done. And so there is a benefit to that. We basically wheeled that whole day to make it to Rubicon Springs. And for anybody who hasn't been to Rubicon Springs, it is a big area and it's beautiful, and there are a lot of places to camp. But when, again, you're doing a big group like this, Rubicon Springs gets packed quickly. And so us being kind of in the middle of the pack, yes, we were fortunate in that, we weren't last, but that first group made it through and basically snatched up every possible great camping spot. And so we ended up kind of being on a rock slab, not really where we wanted to be. But anyways, we were relatively close to the water and got to swim in the waterfalls and play there. Once we set up camp, it didn't make sense to drive the vehicle anymore, so we were walking back to kind of the main host area where the group provided food and drinks and music and kind of where the party was happening. And so for every meal we did have to walk back, but that wasn't that big of a deal. We were playing in the water anyways, and wanting to look at other vehicles and all that good stuff. So, but nevertheless, we got to do the Rubicon. And so the next morning we packed up early. Officially we weren't supposed to hit the trail until like 10, but we got packed so quickly, and because we felt confident in our ability to get out, we were allowed to go early, and so we ended up hitting the trail fairly early, because we wanted to get out of there before the crowds, because we were going to Reno, and because we were heading to Reno, I wanted to go do some wheeling in Nevada. I hadn't done wheeling in Nevada, so we found some small trails to go wheel, just to say, hey, we did some wheeling in Nevada while we were down there. Kind of checked that box, and then found our hotel, because again, this was like day 4 or 5 of camping, and we were filthy and nasty, and we wanted to get clean and clean clothes. So we found our hotel there in Reno, found a nice restaurant to have some dinner, and we relaxed. And so we stopped in an area called Alcatraz. There was a great restaurant there. It was Thai. I had larb, which is one of my favorite meals, but it was good to have some good authentic food and catch my breath before heading north. Another point of interest, in the middle of July, in that area, kind of south of Bend, in the northeastern portion of California, there had to have been millions, if not billions, of locusts. They really just took over the road and the highway, and so I had a relatively clean Jeep prior to getting to that area, and when we stopped at that restaurant in Alcatraz, the Jeep was covered in bug goo from locusts. Very surprising. It was not easy to clean after that. There's probably still some locusts stuck in a drill or somewhere in my Jeep. I almost guarantee it. Really appreciate you watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Like, comment, let me know what you think. I really appreciate it. You'll have a great day, and we'll see you next week.